My brother and sister-in-law believe it's my obligation to pay for their child because I don't have one. Your phone buzzes. You glance down, expecting a work email, maybe a friend. But no. It's your brother's wife, with a message so sickeningly sweet, it practically dripped manipulation, and that's when my world started to unravel. It started with, "Hey, babe, quick question." And I swear, she has never called me a babe to my face. Not once. You know those quick questions that are never actually quick? They're like those tiny cracks in a windshield, you breathe wrong, and suddenly you've got a spider web. My shoulders tensed up. My brain just knew. I didn't answer immediately. Why? Because I'd answered her the week before, and the week before that. It was exhausting. See, I work in financial planning. Sounds fancy, right? But mostly, it means I spend my day telling people no in a really polite way, then writing emails to explain why no is actually the responsible choice. I'm good at it at work. In my personal life? With family? Not so much. Yeah, I know, it's pathetic. Don't even start. When I finally opened the message, it wasn't even a question. It was a list. Not a "would you mind" a list, but a "this is happening" list. It screamed premium. A top-tier gaming chair, the latest sneakers, fancy wireless headphones, a brand new phone. Each item meticulously described, like she copied and pasted it straight from a luxury catalog. Reading it made me feel poor, and I'm the one who helps people manage money. Then came the kicker. The final line. "He's been so good lately and deserves to feel special. You don't have kids, so you get it. You can help." That sentence, it hit me like a physical blow. A little switch flipped inside me. Suddenly, I wasn't 30, sitting in my adult office, paying my own bills. I was 16 again, being told I should be grateful for scraps, because someone else needed more. Different family drama, same gut-wrenching flavor. My name, by the way, is Kala. No last name, because I'm not trying to get doxxed by anyone's aunt with too much time on her hands. I live alone, in a small apartment that's always one broken thing away from chaos. I've spent years trying to build a life that doesn't depend on anyone else's mood swings. I thought I was doing okay. Then my brother married her. Before her, the requests were almost normal. Birthday gifts, holidays, school supplies, the kind of asks you say yes to because they feel harmless, and because my brother always sounded so tired when he relayed them. Then it became, "He really wants this, and you're so good with money." Next thing I knew, she was just sending me screenshots. Like I was her personal ATM with a cute personality. And my brother? He'd always text later, full of apologies and soft words, "I'm sorry she came at you like that. She's stressed." But he never said, "Stop." Never said, "That's not okay." He just apologized, like an umbrella in a hurricane. 2 days after the list arrived, my nephew showed up at my door. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth, which honestly, instantly made me like him more. He clutched that piece of paper like it was evidence in a trial, avoiding my eyes. "Hey," I said, trying to sound normal, trying desperately not to let my simmering anger spill onto him. "You okay?" He just shrugged, but it was the saddest, most defeated shrug I'd ever witnessed. "Mom said I'm supposed to give you this." He practically dropped the list, like it was hot. I scanned it again, then looked at him. "Did you write this?" He shook his head so fast his hair flopped into his eyes. "No, do you even want this stuff?" I asked. I tried for light, but I heard the edge in my own voice. He hesitated. "I mean, I want the chair, but I don't know." He said it like wanting anything was a crime. Something in me just broke. I stepped aside and let him in. We sat at my little kitchen table, the one I bought to feel like a real adult with a real home, even though it wobbles if you lean on it wrong. I poured him juice because that's what you do when a kid looks like he's about to cry. "Do you know how much any of this costs?" I asked. Another shrug. "A lot." "Okay," I said, taking a deep breath. "What if we do something different?" His eyes flicked up. "Like what?" "What if I teach you how to get what you want," I said, "without needing your mom to make you beg people for it?" He blinked. The concept seemed like a foreign language. I can't. I'm just a kid.
Yeah,
I said. But you're a kid who can work. Not, like, factory work, calm down. He actually smiled a little. That felt like a win. You can mow lawns, babysit, help neighbors. You can set a goal. Make a plan. It's boring, and it's not glamorous, but it's yours. He just stared at me, trying to figure out if I was messing with him. My mom says family just helps. Family helps. I agreed. But family doesn't treat you like a tool. Family doesn't turn you into a delivery service for their own demands. He looked down at his hands. She said you wouldn't mind. Of course she did. I grabbed a notebook, because I'm that kind of person, the one with notebooks for everything. I drew 3 boxes: save, spend, goal. How much money do you have right now? He mumbled something about mowing lawns, helping a neighbor carry groceries. It wasn't much, but it was something. Okay, I said, tapping the goal box. Pick one thing you actually want. The chair, he said instantly, then looked guilty, like wanting a chair was a crime. Cool, I told him. Then we figure out what you need, how long it'll take. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep going. He actually leaned forward, totally engaged. Like no one had ever talked to him like he was capable. And that's what got me. That's when my anger shifted, becoming something sharper, more focused. Because the real problem wasn't that a teenager wanted stuff. The problem was his mom using him as a pawn to squeeze me, and everyone acting like that was normal. 5 minutes after he left, my phone buzzed again. Her name, of course. So, she snapped the second I answered. No. Hello, no anything. Did he give you the list? He did, I said. Great, she chirped, like it was settled. When can you order it? I'm not ordering it, I said, and my own voice sounded like ice. I offered to help him learn how to earn it. There was a pregnant pause, the kind where you can practically see someone's face twisting. Are you serious? She finally hissed.
yeah,
I said. I'm serious. You think you're his mother now? She snapped. You think you get to teach him lessons because you have some little job with spreadsheets? Oh, that hit a nerve. Because yes, my job involves spreadsheets, but it's my life. A life I've worked damn hard for. I think I get to decide what I do with my money, I shot back. And I think he deserves respect. He deserves gifts, she shrieked, her voice rising. He's a child. He shouldn't have to work for everything. He doesn't, I said, but he also shouldn't have to beg for things you want to sell. Silence. I hadn't even meant for it to come out like that. It just escaped. Sharp. Ugly. And that silence told me everything. What did you say? She asked, slow and dangerous. I said, I repeated, I'm not buying that list. Not unless you pay me back first. What? She barked. Pay me back for what? For the loan, I said, my hand shaking around the phone, wanting to throw it across the room. The $3,000 you said you'd pay back in 2 months. It's been over a year. She laughed. It wasn't funny. It was the laugh of someone who'd never faced consequences. That wasn't a loan. That was family helping family. Funny, I said, because you literally wrote loan in the text message. You're really going to do this? Her voice shifted into full victim mode. Over money? You're going to punish a child because you're bitter? I swallowed. God, I hated that she could still make me feel like the villain with one sentence. I'm not punishing him, I said. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. Your brother is going to hear about this, she dripped, the threat like poisoned honey. Please tell him, I said, and hung up before my voice cracked. That night, my brother called. He did the thing he always does, starting soft. Hey, he said. She's upset.
yeah,
I replied, flat. I noticed. He sighed. Can you just help this one time? He's been asking. He hasn't been asking, I countered, trying to keep my voice steady. She's been asking through him. Kala, he said, in that tone that made me feel like I was the difficult one. It's not that much to you. That sentence. That exact sentence. It's not that much to you. Like my money wasn't real because I'd earned it without kids. Like my bills didn't count because no one called me a mom. My eyes stung, and I hated myself for it. It's not about the amount, I said, voice trembling. It's about how she treats me. It's about how you let her treat me. He went quiet. Then, whispered, she's stressed. I'm stressed. I snapped. I'm stressed every day. I'm stressed when my rent goes up, when my car makes a weird noise, when I'm one bad month away from panic. And you know what I don't do? I don't send lists to people like they owe me. He didn't answer. He just breathed, and I could hear the vast distance between us, like static on a bad connection. A week later, I made the mistake of going to a family cookout at my parents' house. I told myself it would be fine. I told myself I could handle it. I cannot emphasize enough how often I lied to myself just to keep the peace. The yard was packed with relatives I barely spoke to, the kind who hug you too hard then immediately ask what you're doing with your life. My mother fluttered around like a hostess in a show, her smile too wide. My father stood by the grill, acting like neutrality was a personality trait. And my brother's wife? Oh, she was there, perched on a patio chair like a queen, holding court. My nephew hovered near the cooler, desperately trying to disappear. I had barely sat down before she started. Some people, she announced loudly, looking straight at me, forget what it means to have a heart once they get a little money. My mother laughed nervously, a faint, desperate sound. Let's not do this. I'm not doing anything, she chirped, all fake innocence. I'm just saying it's sad. Kids see everything. My nephew's ears went beet red. I wanted to crawl under the picnic table. A cousin chimed in, because of course, family should help family, she declared, like she'd been waiting her whole life to say it. I took a sip of soda, trying not to explode. I offered to help him earn what he wants, I said, my voice tight. That's helping. That's being stingy, my brother's wife said, and she smiled like she'd just won the lottery. If you cared, you'd just buy it. My brother stared intently at his plate. My mother looked at me, her eyes silently begging me to swallow the disrespect. My father cleared his throat and muttered, let's just all calm down. Something snapped in me. Not dramatic, not movie style. Just a quiet, internal click, like a door locking shut. Okay, I said, setting my cup down with a deliberate thud. If we're talking about caring, can we talk about the $3,000 you borrowed and never paid back? My mother's face went white. Kala, what? I said, louder than I meant to. We're already here. Let's not pretend. My brother's wife's smile flickered, a split second of panic. Oh my God. You're still on that?
Yeah.
I said, because it was my money. It was an emergency, she said quickly, a hint of desperation in her tone. You know that. And 3 weeks later, I continued, you posted a picture with a new designer bag. My mother gasped like I'd sworn in church. My father's eyebrows shot up. My brother finally looked at his wife, confusion clouding his face. She rolled her eyes. It was a gift. From who? I asked, because I couldn't stop. From the emergency? People started talking over each other. My mother's voice rose, trying to shush everyone. My cousin muttered something about me being dramatic. My brother's wife stood up. You know what? Fine. If you want your stupid money, you can have it, but don't act like you're not enjoying humiliating me. I stared at her. I'm not enjoying anything, I said. I'm tired. And that was the truth. I was tired in my bones, in that deep, deep place where you stop caring if people think you're nice. I left early, and my mother followed me to the driveway, grabbing my arm like I was trying to run away from a crime scene. Why couldn't you just let it go, she pleaded. Because it doesn't go away, I said. It just keeps happening. She looked at me like she didn't know what to do with a daughter who wouldn't sacrifice herself to keep everyone else comfortable. You're making this bigger than it is, she insisted. I laughed, sharp and bitter. No, I said. I'm finally seeing how big it actually is. The part one didn't tell you yet is what she did online right after that cookout. Because, of course, she did something online. She didn't come to my door and yell like a normal villain. No, she went for the thing that costs her nothing and still hurts, public shame. The next morning, I woke up to my phone vibrating like it was possessed. Message after message. Some from people I barely knew, some from relatives I hadn't heard from since childhood, a couple from numbers I didn't even recognize. The theme was sickeningly consistent: vague guilt, passive aggression, and that one line everyone loves to repeat when they want you to hand over your life: family is family. Against my better judgment, I opened a social media app. Nothing good has ever happened to me on that thing. And there it was, a long, rambling post from her, written like she was auditioning for sympathy. She didn't use my name, but she didn't have to. She wrote about a child being punished for wanting a normal childhood, and she included a picture of my nephew from 2 years ago, in an old hoodie, looking small and vulnerable. She wrote about how some people would rather hoard money than help a kid. She sprinkled in little details about my job, my single lifestyle, like those were character flaws. She even threw in a line about me weaponizing finance against her son, which sounds ridiculous, but you'd be amazed what people will believe if you package it with a sad photo. I sat on my couch in my pajamas, staring at the screen, and I could literally feel my face getting hot with rage. The worst part wasn't the strangers. The worst part was the comments. People I knew. People who had eaten my mother's food and laughed at my father's jokes. People writing things like, "That's so heartbreaking," and "Kids deserve better," and "Some women are just bitter." Bitter. That word. Like being angry at being used is a personality defect. I typed a response. I typed a whole essay. I attached screenshots of the lone messages. I attached the list. I attached the part where she told her kid to remind me I don't have children. I even hovered over the button to post, because in that moment, I wanted to burn it all down. I know. Petty. Messy. Not the high road. Then I pictured my nephew seeing it. I pictured him reading his mom's public humiliation, and my receipts, and all these adults turning his life into entertainment. My stomach turned. He didn't ask for any of this. So, I deleted it. I deleted everything, and sat there shaking, feeling like I'd swallowed glass. I didn't feel noble. I felt trapped. Like the only way to protect the kid was to let myself get dragged through the mud. At work that day, I tried to pretend nothing was happening. Neutral face on. Coffee. Desk. Spreadsheets. The whole adult routine. Then my supervisor called me into her office. She wasn't mean. She was careful, which somehow made it worse. "Are you okay?" she asked, then something about a couple people saw something online and got concerned. Concerned? Right. I could tell she didn't want to say, "Your sister-in-law made you look like a monster." She just wanted to know if this was going to spill into work. Because work doesn't care about your feelings. Work cares about stability. I nodded, cheeks burning. "It's family drama," I said, the understatement of the century. "It's being handled." She gave me that corporate sympathy smile. "Just keep me updated if anything escalates." I walked back to my desk, wanting to evaporate. My coworker, the one who always has opinions, leaned over and whispered, "Is everything okay with your nephew?" Like she was asking about the weather. "Yep," I mumbled, and stared at my screen until my eyes hurt. That night, my mother called. I could hear in her voice that she'd seen the post. "She's just hurting," my mother said, like that explained everything. "She's lying," I shot back. "She feels attacked," my mother insisted. "I feel attacked." I snapped. "I feel attacked when my reputation gets dragged through the internet because I won't buy a chair." My mother sighed, and I could hear the disappointment. "You're making it sound worse than it is." That's when I did something immature. I laughed. Not a cute laugh. A bitter, ugly laugh. "Okay," I said. "If it's not that bad, you can send her $3,000. You can buy the chair. You can be the hero. Leave me out of it. My mother went quiet. I realized I just said the one thing nobody in my family was allowed to say, put your money where your mouth is. She changed the subject. Of course she did. For the next couple of weeks, it was like living in a low-grade fever. Every notification made my heart jump. My nephew started coming over more. Partly for our little money lessons, partly because my apartment was quiet, and partly because he didn't want to be home while his mom was rage texting people about me. He'd sit at my table doing homework, and I'd hear him flinch every time his phone buzzed. Like his body had learned that messages meant stress. One day he asked me, is it my fault? He couldn't even look at me when he said it. I put down my fork. No, I said. Then I said it again, slower, because sometimes kids need repetition. No, this is not your fault. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. That's the thing about being raised around manipulation. You start assuming you're the problem before you even know why. Around the same time, my brother started texting me apologies that felt like band-aids on a broken bone. I'm sorry she posted that, he'd write. I'm trying. Then he'd follow it up with, can you just ignore her? Like ignoring someone who's trying to ruin your credit is a hobby. I snapped on him once. I sent a long message I immediately regretted. I wrote, you don't get to ask me to ignore the person you let bully me for years. You don't get to be neutral when your wife treats me like a cash machine. I hit send, then stared at my phone like it had betrayed me. He didn't reply for hours. I spent those hours spiraling, rereading my message, thinking about how it sounded, thinking about how my family always labels me too emotional-y when I finally speak up. Then he replied with, I know. I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix it. That message made me feel both angry and sad. Because I could hear that he meant it. He was drowning, too. He just kept expecting me to be the flotation device. A couple days after that, she did something that made me realize she wasn't just mad. She was strategic. She sent my nephew to my apartment again, but this time, she told him to ask me for my social security number for school forms. Later, I realized she might have already had pieces of it from the tax mess years ago, but she wanted me to confirm it, clean and current, like I'd hand it to her myself. When he told me that, I just stared at him. What forms? I asked. He shrugged. She just said she needs it. My whole body went cold. You don't give anyone that, I said, keeping my voice calm because I didn't want to scare him. Not even family. Not unless you understand exactly why. He nodded fast, eyes wide. I didn't, he said. I told her I didn't know it. Good, I said. And then I went into my bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub, trying not to panic. Because that meant she was already thinking about using my information before the credit alert ever came. That meant the fraud wasn't a one-off. It was part of her plan. So,
Yeah.
by the time we got to the credit alert, I was already on edge. I was sleeping like garbage. I was carrying this constant, low-level rage that made me snap at the wrong people. I yelled at a barista for getting my order wrong, then apologized like I was trying to undo my own personality. I cried in my car in a grocery store parking lot because I saw a kid with his mom, and my brain decided that was the moment to break. I wish I could say I handled this gracefully. I did not. 2 mornings later, my nephew texted me asking if we could meet before school. He never texts me. My stomach dropped. We met at a coffee shop near his school, the kind of place that smells like burnt sugar and desperation. He slid into the booth like he was sneaking into a confession. I have something, he whispered, pulling out his phone, his hands shaking. He showed me a message thread with his mom. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't, can you ask your aunt nicely? It was instructions. Say this, she'd written. Don't mention the loan. If she argues, tell her she's selfish. If she says no, remind her she doesn't have kids. It was like reading a script for a play where I'm always the villain. My throat went tight. Did you show your dad this? I asked. He shook his head. He'll just get mad at me. He shouldn't, I said, but I didn't sound confident, because I'd watched my brother defend her for years. Why are you showing me now? His eyes filled up, and he blinked fast, trying not to cry in public. Because she said she was going to sell it, he whispered. What? I breathed. He nodded and scrolled. And there it was. His mom telling him straight up that the items weren't for him. They were easy money because people always buy that stuff. She told him he'd get something small for being helpful. She told him to stop being sensitive. She told him he owed her for everything she'd done. I felt sick. I'm so sorry, I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. He swallowed hard. I'm sorry, too. No, I said. You're the kid. You're not the one who should be sorry. I took pictures of everything because I know how people get when you try to talk without proof. Then I went home and sat on my couch, staring at the wall, feeling like my family had turned into a machine that runs on guilt. A few days after that, I got an alert from my credit monitoring service. New account inquiry, it said, and my heart basically fell out of my body. I hadn't applied for anything. I hadn't even opened a store card in years, because I like my credit score more than I like impulse purchases. I called the number, and the person on the other end asked me a bunch of questions that made my skin crawl. Full name, social security number, date of birth. They told me someone had tried to open a new line of credit using my information and an address that wasn't mine. What address? I asked, already knowing the answer in my gut. They told me. And yep. It was my brother's address. My hands went numb. I drove to the bank on my lunch break, clutching my license like a talisman, and I sat across from a fraud specialist who spoke in calm, measured sentences while my brain screamed. They printed out a report, my name, my number, my information, my brother's address. I walked back to my car and sat there shaking, staring at the steering wheel like it could explain anything. The only people who could have done it were people who had access to my documents, and the only time my documents were ever out was 2 years ago, when my brother asked me to help him with taxes. We'd spread papers across my kitchen table. His wife had been there. She'd made a big show of cleaning up, like she was being helpful. I want to go back in time and smack myself. Gently, or not so gently. I didn't even go home first. I drove straight to their house, heart pounding so loud I could hear it over my car's sad little engine. I knocked, and when she opened the door, she smiled like she wasn't a person who might have just tried to ruin my financial life. Hey, she said, fake cheerful. What's up? I held up the paper. This, I said. Explain it. Her eyes flicked to the paper, then back to my face. For a second, something flashed there. Fear. Then she pasted on confusion. I don't know what that is, she said. It's a credit application, I countered. With my social security number. With your address. She laughed again, that same cruel, dismissive laugh. That's ridiculous. Is it? I said. Because it sure looks real. She tried to close the door, and I put my hand out to stop it. Yes, I know. Not my proudest moment. I was spiraling. Don't, I said. Don't you dare. She hissed, get your hand off my door. Tell me the truth, I said, my voice shaking. Did you do this? Her eyes darted inside, like she was checking who could hear. You're being crazy, she said. That's when my brother walked in from the hallway, and his face went immediately tense. What's going on? He asked. I shoved the paper at him. Someone tried to open credit in my name using your address, I said. Tell me that wasn't her. He stared at the paper, and his jaw tightened. What? He whispered. She jumped in fast. It's a mistake, she said. Maybe they typed the address wrong. Maybe it's a scam. It's not a typo, I said. It's my information and your address. That's not random. My brother looked at her. Did you do this? He asked, and I could hear his voice crack. She widened her eyes, like she was the injured party. Why would I do that? She demanded. I was shaking with anger and fear, and I did something I probably shouldn't have. I stepped past them into their little home office, like I belonged there, because in my head, if someone was messing with my identity, all bets were off. I opened drawers. I checked piles. I wasn't looking for drama. I was looking for my life. And what I found wasn't my life. It was theirs, falling apart. There were envelopes stacked in a corner, unopened notices, warnings, late fees. I pulled one out and saw a balance that made my stomach twist. Then another. Then another. Credit cards, store cards, a car loan. All behind. All overdue. It was like looking at a slow-motion financial crash. My brother stepped in behind me and I heard his breath catch. "What is that?" he asked, his voice small. She followed, trying to grab the papers out of my hands. "Don't," she snapped. "Those are private." "Private?" I barked, because the word felt insane. "You tried to use my social security number. You lost the right to private." My brother picked up one of the notices and read it, and I watched his face change from confusion to shock to something like grief. "This says we owe." He started, but couldn't even finish. She crossed her arms. "It's fine," she said. "It's under control." "It's not under control," he said, louder. And the sound of him raising his voice was so rare, it made the air feel different. "How much is this?" She rolled her eyes, like he was being annoying. "You're overreacting," he snapped. "Answer me." She hesitated. And that hesitation was louder than any confession. "It's not that much," she said finally. And I almost laughed, because there it was again, that phrase, "not that much." Like money is imaginary until it ruins you. I left before it turned into a screaming match, because I could feel my body buzzing and I didn't trust myself not to say something I couldn't take back. In my car, I called the fraud line again and put a freeze on my credit. I filed a report. I did the boring adult stuff while my hands shook. Then I sat there and cried, because even when you do everything right, you can still get dragged into someone else's mess. After that confrontation at their house, I thought the worst part would be over, for a minute. Like, okay, I caught her. I froze my credit. I did all the responsible steps. Now I can breathe. That was adorable of me. Within 24 hours, she started showing up in places she didn't need to be. The first time, she came to my apartment building on a Sunday afternoon. I heard her in the hallway before I saw her, because her voice carries when she's performing. She was telling someone on the phone, loud enough for half the floor to hear, that she was just trying to talk, and I was refusing to face the damage I caused. Then she started knocking. Not polite knocking. The kind of knocking that says, "I know you're in there, and I want witnesses." I didn't open the door. I stood behind it like a scared animal, holding my phone, debating if I should call the building manager, the police, my mother, the moon. My neighbor across the hall opened her door a crack and looked at me like, "Are you bringing this into our shared space?" My brother's wife leaned toward my door and said, "Kala, stop hiding." Like I was a teenager sneaking out. Then she said, "You're ruining my family," which was rich, considering she had literally tried to take out credit in my name. I cracked the door just enough to speak, because part of me still believed if I used the right tone, this could be handled. "I know, I'm learning." "You need to leave," I said. She smiled that tight smile. "Oh, now you're going to act scared," she said. "After you came into my house and dug through my things? You tried to steal my identity." I said, my voice shaking with anger. "Get out of my hallway," she raised her voice even more. "You're obsessed," she shrieked. "You're lonely and jealous, and you want my life." I laughed, because the alternative was screaming. "My life?" I repeated. "The one with hidden debt and fraud reports?" That set her off. She started yelling about how I was attacking a mother, and she brought up my lack of kids like it was a felony. My neighbor shut her door. Someone down the hall peeked out. I could feel myself shrinking and also boiling at the same time, which is a weird combo. I called the building manager, voice shaking, and I said, "There's someone in the hallway harassing me." I didn't say her name. I didn't want the drama to become permanent gossip. The manager came up, asked her to leave. She refused. He said he'd call the police if she didn't. She laughed and said, "Call them." Like she wanted the scene. So he did. When the officer arrived, everything got quiet, in that stiff way people get when authority shows up. She immediately switched voices. Suddenly, she was calm, fragile, misunderstood. "I'm just trying to talk," she said, hand to chest, like she was auditioning. "She's been very hostile, and I don't know why." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shove the fraud paperwork in the officer's face and yell, "This is why." Instead, I took a deep breath and said, "I want her to leave. She's been contacting me repeatedly, and I'm asking for space." The officer asked her if she could leave peacefully. She stared at me and said, "Fine." Like she was doing me a favor. Then, right before she walked away, she leaned in and whispered, "This isn't over." Yes, she actually whispered it like a movie villain. I almost laughed. After that, I went to the local police station and filed a report about the attempted identity theft and the harassment. It wasn't dramatic. It was fluorescent lights, boring forms, a tired person behind a desk asking me to spell my name. The officer told me they'd document it, which is cop speak for good luck. They told me if she showed up again, I could call. They told me about protective orders in general terms, but it sounded like a whole process, and I was already exhausted. I did the freeze with the credit bureaus. I set up fraud alerts. I changed passwords. I changed my security questions, because I realized my mother's maiden name is basically public knowledge in my family. And that made me feel sick. I started checking my accounts daily, like a ritual. Like if I looked often enough, I could prevent catastrophe. And then the shame hit. Not shame because I did anything wrong, but shame because my life had become this. Shame because I had to explain to a bank employee that my brother's wife tried to use my social security number. Shame because I had to ask my supervisor for an afternoon off to deal with a fraud report, and she looked at me like she wanted to help, but also wanted to run. I started sleeping with my phone face down, because every notification made me jump. I started leaving my apartment through the side door when I could, just in case she was lurking. I know that sounds paranoid. It was paranoid. But when someone crosses that kind of line, your brain stops trusting the world. I told my brother about the police report, and he got quiet. "She did that to you?" he asked, like he still needed to hear it out loud. "Yes," I said. "She did." He whispered, "I'm so sorry." And for once, it didn't sound like a reflex. It sounded like a man realizing he'd brought a storm into everyone's house. A week later, he asked me if I could help him go through the debt paperwork. He sounded embarrassed, but also desperate. I said yes, because I'm still me, and I still have that problem where I jump in to fix things, even when I'm angry. We sat at my wobbly table with stacks of envelopes and made lists. We did the math. We made phone calls. We listened to hold music and we got transferred. We got told, "You need to speak to another department." It was hours of bureaucracy, and at the end, my brother looked like he wanted to throw up. "This is my life," he said softly. How did I not see it? Because she was loud, I wanted to say, "And you were tired." Because you thought love meant swallowing your own discomfort. Because you didn't want to admit you married someone who sees people as resources. I didn't say all that. I just said, "You're seeing it now." That same week, my nephew came over and quietly asked if he could leave some clothes at my place just in case. That request did something to me. It made everything feel real in a new way. Not just adult drama, but kid survival. So, I bought him a second toothbrush and a cheap set of pajamas, and I tucked them in a drawer like I was creating a lifeboat. I hate that I had to, but I did. A few days later, my nephew showed up at my apartment again, this time with a backpack, like he was running away. "I can't be there," he said, his voice flat. "What happened?" I asked, and my stomach clenched. He pulled out his phone and showed me screenshots. He'd been using their family tablet for homework, and a message popped up from a group chat. He'd accidentally seen his mom talking about my brother, calling him a stupid, calling him easy, laughing about how she could make him do anything if she cried. He scrolled, and there were messages about me, too. She called me bitter. She called me lonely. She said I was obsessed with money because I don't have a real life. She joked about how I'd pay eventually because I'm guilt-prone. She laughed about the loan. She admitted she never planned to pay it back. My nephew's face was tight, like he was trying to hold himself together with sheer will. She talks about me like that, too, he whispered. I looked at the screenshots and I wanted to throw up. Did your dad see these? I asked. He shook his head. Not yet. I don't know how. You shouldn't have to, I said, and I hated that my voice sounded like it might break. But he needs to. That weekend, my mother demanded a family meeting. She texted like it was an emergency, like someone had died. Everyone needs to be there, she wrote. We need to fix this. Fix this. Like it was a broken appliance. We met at my parents' house. My mother sat at the head of the table like a judge. My father sat beside her, arms folded. My brother looked exhausted, like he'd aged 5 years in a week. His wife came in late, hair perfect, face innocent. My aunt was there, too, because my aunt treats other people's lives like her favorite show. My mother started with her peace voice. We're family, she said. We need to come to an understanding. My brother's wife jumped in. Exactly, she said. This has gotten so out of hand. I stared at her. You tried to open credit in my name, I said, and my voice was calm, which surprised even me. That's not out of hand. That's a line. My mother flinched. Kala, please. No, I said. I'm done with please. My brother's wife widened her eyes. I didn't do that, she said, smooth as silk. My brother slammed a folder on the table. Stop lying, he said. And everyone jumped, because he never slams anything. I called the bank. I saw the paperwork. The address and the phone number. It's ours. My aunt gasped, hand to chest. Oh my. His wife scoffed. You're going to believe her over me? My brother's voice cracked. I'm looking at facts, he said. And I'm looking at the debt you hid. My mother whispered, debt? My brother nodded, eyes glassy. There's so much. His wife finally dropped the innocent act, just a little. I was under pressure, she snapped. Do you know what it's like to have everyone expecting you to keep up? Keep up with what? I asked. Who are you trying to impress? She pointed at me. People like her, she said. People who think they're better because they have a career and no responsibilities. I laughed. Because it was either laugh or scream. No responsibilities? I said. I pay my own rent. I pay my own bills. I have responsibilities. They're just not cute enough for you to weaponize. My mother tried to mediate. Of course. Maybe we can all agree to forgive, and no, I said, firm. I'm not forgiving identity theft. My father finally spoke, slow and careful. If this is true, he said, looking at my brother's wife, you need help. She rolled her eyes. Everyone needs help, she muttered. My brother stood up, his chair scraping loudly. I'm done, he said. I'm done being embarrassed in my own house. I'm done watching you use our kid like a bargaining chip. I'm done. His wife looked stunned. And for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then she hissed, you can't leave me. He laughed. Bitter. Watch me. After that meeting, things didn't magically get better. They got messier. And by messier, I mean it started bleeding into parts of my life I'd kept separate. Like, for example, my dating life. I tried to go on a date about a month into this whole disaster because my friend from work kept saying, you need a distraction. And I was like, sure, let's pretend a distraction exists when your family is on fire. I met this guy at a casual restaurant. Nothing fancy. And within 10 minutes, I was already thinking about my nephew's homework and whether my credit report was still clean. He asked me what I do for fun, and I almost said panic. Then my phone buzzed. 3 calls from my mother. I declined the first 2 because I was trying to be a normal person for once. But then the third one came, and my gut told me something was wrong. I excused myself and stepped outside. My mother answered with, she's here. Where? I asked, already knowing. At our house, my mother whispered. She showed up with your nephew. She's crying. Your brother's on his way. Can you come? I stood in the parking lot, night air cold on my face, and I felt this wave of exhaustion so strong it almost made me nauseous. I looked back through the window and saw the guy sipping his drink, waiting, probably thinking I'd gone to the bathroom. I almost laughed at the sheer normality of him compared to the utter chaos of me. I can't, I said. Because if I said yes every time, I would never have a life. You need to handle it. My mother sounded offended. Kala, this is your family. It's your house, I said. It's your boundary. I'm not coming to witness another performance. I hung up and walked back inside, trying to smile at my date like nothing happened. He asked if everything was okay. I said, family stuff. And he nodded like he understood, but I could tell he didn't. How could he? Even I didn't understand why grown adults kept choosing chaos like it was their favorite hobby. The date ended early. He was polite about it, but I could feel him deciding I was too much, which, fair. I went home and ate cereal standing at my counter, and I felt this sharp sadness that didn't even have anything to do with him. It was like I was mourning the version of my life that could have been simple. A few days later, I found out what happened at my parents' house that night. My brother's wife had shown up crying, holding my nephew's hand like a prop, telling my mother she didn't know where else to go. She told my mother she was scared my brother would take her child away. She told my mother she was trying to get help. She even asked to stay the night. My mother, who folds under tears like she's made of paper, almost said yes. My father said no, which shocked everyone, because my father saying no is like seeing a dog do algebra. My brother showed up mid-scene, and apparently he looked her in the face and said, "Stop using my parents." And my mother cried, because she hates confrontation more than she loves truth. My nephew sat on the couch, staring at the floor. No one asked him how he felt. That part still makes me furious. Then there was my workplace. One afternoon, I was in the break room reheating leftovers, trying to pretend my life wasn't a mess, when my phone buzzed with a message from the front desk. "Someone is asking for you," it said. I walked out, and there she was, in my office building lobby, hair perfect, face calm, acting like she belonged there. I stopped dead. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying not to raise my voice, because I could already feel eyes on us. She smiled, like we were old friends. "I just want to talk," she said. "No," I said. "You don't get to show up at my job." She tilted her head. "You're really going to keep acting like I'm some criminal?" she asked, loud enough that the receptionist looked up. I felt my face heat up. "You tried to open credit in my name," I said, and I kept my voice low, but the words themselves were loud. She scoffed. "That was a misunderstanding," she said, stepping closer. "You could fix all of this if you just stop being so stubborn." "Leave," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "Right now." She glanced around, like she wanted an audience. "You're embarrassing yourself," she murmured. I wanted to scream, but instead, I walked to the front desk and said, "This person is harassing me. She is not allowed here." The receptionist looked uncomfortable, like she didn't want to pick a side. And I hated that my drama was becoming other people's problem. Security came. They asked her to leave. She acted offended. "I am family," she said, like that meant she had rights to my workplace. Security didn't care. They escorted her out. When I turned around, my supervisor was standing there, eyes wide. "Is that related to what we talked about?" she asked carefully. I nodded, throat tight. "I'm so sorry," I said. She sighed and said, "Take the rest of the day if you need it." Her voice wasn't unkind, but I could hear the concern underneath. How stable is this situation, and is it going to keep happening? I went to my car and cried again, in the same parking lot where I'd cried about the social media post. It was becoming my regular hobby, crying in my car like a teenager, except I had a full-time job and a retirement account. And that somehow didn't make the tears less embarrassing. After that, I started documenting everything. Every call, every text, every appearance. I kept a notebook in my purse like I was my own investigator. Not because I Wanted a courtroom battle, but because I was tired of being told I was exaggerating. I was tired of being gaslit by people who love peace more than they love me. By the time the next family holiday rolled around a few months later, it was brutal. My mother tried to host like everything was fine, because that's her coping mechanism. She set the table, made food, lit candles, did all the normal stuff. Like, if the atmosphere looks calm, then maybe the people will be too. My brother came with my nephew, looking tense. My brother's wife was not invited, but she showed up anyway. She knocked on the door with a bag in her hand, like she was bringing gifts. My mother opened it, because my mother always opens it. She stood there in the doorway, smiling, saying, "I just want to see my family." My nephew froze behind his dad. My brother's jaw clenched. I felt my body go into fight or flight mode. My brother stepped forward and said, "You need to leave." She started crying, on cue. "You're keeping my child from me." She wailed, loud enough that the neighbor's dog started barking. She held up the bag and said, "I brought him a present." She tried to angle it so my mother would see her as the victim. My mother started to waver. I could see it on her face, that familiar weakness, the urge to smooth it over. And I did something I'm not proud of. I snapped. "Stop crying like it's a magic trick," I said, loud. And the whole room went silent. Her eyes flashed with rage for a split second before she caught herself. "How dare you," she whispered. "How dare you show up here?" I shot back. "This isn't about you," my brother said. "Get off my parents' porch." And his voice sounded like steel. She didn't leave. She kept yelling. She started calling him abusive. She started calling me a witch. She told my mother she was a bad grandmother for allowing this. She told my father he was cold. It was like watching someone throw a tantrum in real time and expecting the world to reward it. My father did something I never thought I'd see. He picked up his phone and called the non-emergency line, calmly, like he was ordering a pizza. The operator asked questions. My father answered. My mother cried quietly, because she hates when reality breaks the illusion of family harmony. My nephew stood behind my brother, fists clenched, face pale. When the officer arrived, the performance started again. But this time, my brother didn't fold. He showed the temporary custody order, the schedule, the supervised visit agreement. The officer told her she had to leave. She screamed, "You're all against me," and stormed off. After the door closed, we stood there in the quiet. And my mother whispered, "This isn't how I wanted the holiday to go," like the holiday was the tragedy. I looked at her and said, "This isn't how I wanted my life to go." And she finally stopped talking. There were fights. There were tears. There were days my brother didn't answer anyone's calls because he was probably sitting somewhere trying to figure out how his life became this. My nephew stayed with me more and more. At first, just for a weekend. Then, just until things calmed down. Things did not calm down. He started doing odd jobs more seriously. He made a little flyer and taped it to neighbors' doors, offering lawn care, dog walking, help with chores. He'd come home sweaty and proud, counting cash like it was treasure. "I made $80, he'd say, beaming. And I'd feel this weird mix of pride and sadness, because kids shouldn't have to feel responsible for saving themselves. But also, wow, look at him. My brother came to my apartment one night after work, standing in my doorway like he didn't know if he deserved to be let in. "You were right," he said, his voice flat. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "I didn't want to be," I said. He nodded, and his eyes looked red. I kept thinking, if I just kept the peace, it would get better. "Keeping the peace with someone like that is just feeding them," I said. And then I immediately regretted how harsh it sounded. But it was true. He sat on my couch and put his head in his hands. "I feel stupid," he whispered.
Yeah,
I said softly. "Me, too. In my own way." That was when he told me he'd talked to a lawyer. Nothing dramatic, just a consultation. He said the words separation and custody like they tasted bitter. He said he was trying to protect their kid and keep the financial damage from swallowing them whole. He said he was scared. I didn't hug him. I'm not a hugger when I'm mad. But I handed him a glass of water and sat beside him. And that was my version of love. His wife, meanwhile, went online and started posting vague, dramatic messages about betrayal and mental health and people who don't understand what you're going through. She never said my name. She didn't have to. People who love drama can smell it through a screen. I got messages from relatives I haven't seen in years asking what happened, like my life was a show they could binge. At work, I tried to pretend everything was normal. I took meetings. I answered emails. I smiled at the right times. And then I'd go to the bathroom and stare at myself in the mirror like, is this really my life? Is my biggest stress really my brother's wife trying to steal my identity? Because that sounds fake, and I wish it was. A month into the chaos, my mother called me late at night. She never calls late. I'm sorry, she said the second I answered. I almost didn't know what to do with it. For what? I asked, because I didn't trust it. For telling you to let it go, she said. For acting like you were the problem. I hate conflict. I hate it, too, I said. But I hate being used more. She sniffled, and I could picture her sitting on her bed, phone pressed to her ear, looking wounded. I didn't want to believe she'd do something like that, she said. I know, I said, softer than I felt. It's easier to believe your daughter is dramatic than to believe your daughter is being targeted. Silence. I'm proud of you, she said finally. And I almost laughed, because it felt late, but it still landed somewhere in my chest. The legal stuff moved slow, because that's how it works. My brother got a temporary custody arrangement. Nothing fancy, just a schedule. His wife got supervised visits at first, because of the fraud situation and the instability, and she acted like it was a personal attack instead of a consequence. She posted about being silenced and punished. She sent my brother long messages, flipping between apologies and threats. He stopped showing me the messages, because he said seeing them made him feel sick. He moved into a smaller apartment that smelled like fresh paint and defeat. He sold furniture. He learned how to cook basic meals, because his wife had always done the kitchen stuff, partly because she liked control, partly because my brother let her. My nephew started splitting time between his dad's place and mine, mostly because mine was closer to his school, and because he liked having a space where no one was screaming. And me? I dealt with the social fallout. People who had seen her post didn't exactly apologize. They just acted awkward. A neighbor who used to wave started looking at the floor in the elevator. A woman from my parents' church made a comment about airing dirty laundry, and I smiled and said, better than letting it rot in the dark. And she looked offended. Good. I changed my phone number, because I started getting anonymous calls with heavy breathing and little insults. And I refused to spend my nights jumping at every buzz. I blocked relatives who messaged me like I was the villain. I stopped attending certain family events, because I didn't feel like being judged by people who would never step in to help anyway. And yes, I cried about it. I cried in my car, in my shower, in my kitchen while reheating leftovers. Like that was the breaking point. It wasn't. It was everything. Time passed in that uneven way it does when you're stressed, where weeks feel like minutes and also like years. My nephew kept working. He kept saving. He kept showing me his little notebook with the boxes I'd drawn, now filled with actual numbers and plans. He'd say, I put half in savings like you said. And I'd say, good. And then I'd add, but also, you're allowed to buy yourself a sandwich sometimes, okay? Because I didn't want him turning into an anxious little adult at 14. My brother started therapy, which I never thought he'd do, because he's the kind of man who thinks feelings are something you push down until they dissolve. He told me one night, I didn't realize how much I was afraid of her. And that sentence sat heavy between us. His wife tried one last big performance about a year after it all started. She made a long post about healing and forgiveness and being misunderstood. She tagged my mother in it, which was bold, and my mother didn't respond. My aunt shared it, because of course she did, and I ignored it. I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself. I didn't send screenshots. I just lived my life, which honestly, was the most insulting thing I could do to her. On a chilly Saturday morning, my nephew came over with a grin so wide it looked painful. He popped his backpack on my floor and said, "I did it." "Did what?" I asked, even though I already knew, because I wanted to hear him say it. He pulled out a receipt from his pocket like it was a trophy. "I bought the chair," he said. "With my money. And I didn't blow everything." "How much did you save?" I asked. He puffed up, like he'd been waiting for this question. "I saved $1,800 total," he said, proud. And I could tell he'd practiced saying it without sounding like he was bragging. The chair was $500 and change. The rest is staying in savings, like we planned. I laughed and shook my head. "That's insane," I said. "I'm proud of you." He sat down at my kitchen table, the wobbly one, and he looked at me with this serious expression that made him look older than he should. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not lying to me." My throat tightened. "I didn't do anything special," I said, and I hated how my voice got soft. "You did," he insisted. "Everyone else they just wanted me to do what they said. You treated me like I wasn't stupid." I wanted to cry. I wanted to go back and protect him from every adult who had failed him, but I couldn't. So, I did the only thing I could do. I nodded and said, "You're not stupid. You're just surrounded by people who act like consequences are optional." He laughed a little, and it sounded like relief. That night, after he went home to his dad's place, I sat on my couch and stared at my ceiling, thinking about how weird family is. How you can love people and still have to step away. How you can set boundaries and still feel guilty. How you can be right and still feel sad. Being right is overrated, by the way. My brother and I aren't magically healed. We're rebuilding, slowly, awkwardly, with a lot of honest conversations that should have happened years ago. My mother is trying, in her own imperfect way. My father still hates conflict, but at least he stopped telling me to swallow disrespect for the sake of peace. My aunt still thinks she's the narrator of everyone's life, and I still avoid her. And my brother's wife? She exists on the edges now. Supervised visits, short interactions, no access to anyone's passwords or paperwork. She's still convinced she's the victim. I stopped needing her to understand. And the $3,000? I didn't let it evaporate into "I family helps family." My brother paid me back in pieces once he separated his finances from her. Not because I begged, but because he finally saw what she'd normalized. I hate that it took all of this, but I'm not carrying her debt as my life lesson anymore. Even now, I still do this ridiculous little routine where I open my credit report like I'm checking the weather. And if everything looks normal, I let myself breathe for a second before the anxiety crawls back in. I hate that she trained my nervous system like that. But I also refuse to pretend it didn't happen, because pretending is how my family kept feeding her in the first place. Nothing else ever got opened in my name after the freeze. The attempt stayed an attempt. But the anxiety stuck around longer than the paperwork did. I wish I could say it ended with some perfect revenge moment where everyone clapped, and she apologized, and I rode off into the sunset. That's not how it works. Real life is slower. Anne Messier. Real life is you checking your credit report at midnight because you don't trust the silence. Real life is your nephew texting you a picture of his savings notebook like it's a love letter. Real life is learning that family is not a blank check. And if you're waiting for me to tell you I forgive her? No.